Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. This is your host, MagMongoSlade. Today we're going to talk about AEW Collision and the idea of a soft brand split for AEW. Now, when it comes to CM Punk drama, I'm not chasing all of the nooks and crannies of this thing. We'll do a separate video on it when there's more information to be put out there. Today, we're just going to talk about Collision. So, AEW Collision apparently is going to happen. It's going to be a 2-hour show on Saturday. Now, in order to populate this show and to make this show matter, apparently there's going to be a brand split, or a quote-unquote soft brand split for AEW, in which CM Punk and FTR are essentially going to get their own show, while Kenny Omega and the Elite are going to get their own show. So Dynamite is going to be the Kenny Omega Elite show, Collision, AEW, FTR. And Rampage is going to be something in between. So essentially it's going to be the same structure as AEW, as WWE. Raw, SmackDown, NXT, Dynamite, Collision, ROH. It's going to be the same thing. Now, the issue that we're going to have here is that AEW as a brand is not really all that strong. It's been around for a little while, but is it a strong enough brand that it can hold all of this product that they put out there? Now, I know a lot of people have said, asked the question, how can you watch all of the wrestling that's possible to be watched in 1 week? Well, I can tell you right now, I don't watch everything. I can't. It's right now. It's too much. This is before Collision comes out. It's too much. I don't watch Rampage. I skip Impact most weeks. I don't watch New Japan or Stardom at all. Ring of Honor, I don't watch that either. So there's a lot of product I just don't watch. Or if I do watch it, it's because I had some downtime and I can fast forward through it or something like that, which is what I do with Impact and sometimes Ring of Honor, is I'll fast forward through most of it, just in case there's something in there that might be interesting. There is not most of the time, but there, it is what it is. Now, if Collision was to come on the air, and it comes on Saturday night, it puts AEW in a weird position because they have pay-per-views on Saturday nights. So, are they going to bump their own show? Rampage, for starters, gets bumped all the time for basketball games. No doubt Collision would face the same issue. It would get bumped a lot for basketball games and different things like that. So you're already talking about looking not even that far into the future. It's going to have an issue with inconsistent time slot and that kind of stuff. So Rampage already gets bumped around. Rampage doesn't get a lot of love as far as television is concerned. A lot of the B and C level stars populate Rampage. And you end up in a situation where Rampage only guys almost exist. And Rampage is a show that a little more than half of the Dynamite viewers watch. I think the average for Rampage is like 450,000 viewers, while the average for Dynamite is like 900,000. So that's about equal, about exactly half. When you say Collision, well, CM Punk is a big draw for AEW fans. So it's going to clearly do more, but it's going to be on a worse night. It's going to be on a Saturday night. So you're talking about putting people, keeping people in their home on a Saturday night to watch wrestling. And a wrestling show that will sometimes run up against WWE pay-per-views, that will sometimes run up against AEW pay-per-views, sometimes run up against the NBA or the NFL or something like that. You're talking about actual issues here. So that's going to be a very, very interesting scenario to look at. But I think the bigger question here is going to be the championships. What are you going to do with the titles? ROH has its own set of titles, which handles the Ring of Honor problem. But Dynamite and Rampage have been sharing belts. So that means Dynamite, Rampage, and Collision are going to have to share belts. What are you going to do with the world champion? Is he going to be on all 3 shows? Well, the world champion as currently doesn't even appear on Rampage. So it is what it is. The tag team titles. Well, FTR are the tag team champions. If you want to see the tag team titles are going to be on Collision, then I'm guessing the trios titles are going to be on Dynamite. Okay, fine. What about the international title? Where is it going to be? What about the TBS title or the women's world title or whatever, all these other belts? You're going to have to find a way to split those things down the middle so that those champions can be seen by the largest audience possible. And you also have to take into account that they have been using Ring of Honor championships on AEW TV. They occasionally have a Ring of Honor women's title on TV, or a women's Ring of Honor world title match on TV, or something like that. And are we going to do that with Collision? Is it Collision going to be a backdoor into bringing Ring of Honor to television? Is it going to be Claudio and all of those guys going over to Collision, and they're going to populate that show? Is the Ring of Honor world title going to be the central piece to the Collision show? It's entirely possible, and that's definitely something I think they can get away with for a little while, as a way of getting people to watch that program. Is you could have, a situation where the Ring of Honor roster is used to populate most of Collision, along with some of CM Punk's friends from the regular AEW roster. But, it's just some ideas I'm having dumped around in my head. Considering Tony Khan isn't in the storyline business, he's in the matchmaking business. He just makes matches. He just throws matches out there. People are like, ooh la la. You're going to have to ask the question, look, there's already at least 4 hours of AEW TV that is created that nobody watches. Rampage, Elevation, and Dark. That's 3. And then most people don't watch Ring of Honor either. So that's 4.5 hours of the product that Tony Khan sits down to create, that he dumps millions of dollars into, that most people, even his own audience, don't even watch. So you're talking about creating 2 more hours. Now, these 2 hours are more likely to be watched to the same degree as Dynamite. So you're talking about a legitimate B show on this situation, at least in our original formulation of it. At least for a little while, it's going to be, hey, if you want to see some stars, you want to watch Collision. And they're going to be doing something that matters. It's going to be storylines and stuff like that. But then you talk about CM Punk and FTR being sort of the stars of that show. Well, and it's on a Saturday night, and it might be running up against football, and it might be running up against the NFL, against the NBA, and it might be running up against a WWE pay-per-view or an AEW pay-per-view. What are you going to do? And then we talk about how Tony Khan will book the show, or is he going to let CM Punk book the show? However that's going to go, it's going to be a big question here. Now, in terms of Warner Brothers, it's a good deal for them. It's a good deal for AEW too, because somebody's got to pay for this extra show, this Collision show, and I'm guessing Warner Brothers is going to pay for it to a degree, of course, while Tony Khan's going to be paying the roster. So that means that Tony Khan's going to get a thumbs up from Warner Brothers to take 2 more hours of their television product, put 2 more hours of television product on the air. That's good for them, at least for now. But it circles back to the question that I had before about this attempt to force AEW onto WWE's level, while we're going to basically invest in our own WWE, which is what Warner Brothers is probably going to try to do here. In which case, you have to be realistic. They don't have the star power, they don't have the brand recognition, and they simply don't have the strength in their A show to split it into 2 different shows. Even when CM Punk was on Dynamite, it wasn't doing hellacious numbers. It wasn't like destroying, box office or anything like that. Now, it has tumbled quite a bit since CM Punk left. But at the same time, when he was there, it was 900,000, 950,000. It wasn't really, doing really, really well. Okay. Now, that being said, if you split that product into 2, you're talking about 2 low performing products in your portfolio, which they have currently. You have 2 underperforming products in their portfolio with Dynamite and Rampage. I don't care what anybody says, Dynamite should be doing better than it is. Now, it may be doing fine for Warner, but I don't think anybody would disagree that, considering Dynamite has done better numbers than it's doing currently, people want Dynamite to do better numbers than they do currently. So, especially when WWE has their ratings for, especially Raw, has increased a little bit. Now I know it's gone down some post WrestleMania due to the lull in the programming. You got the WrestleMania bump, and then it kind of started careening down a little bit. But you don't even get a pay-per-view bump for Dynamite. So you don't get that pay-per-view decrease either. It's just consistently 850 to 900, etc. And this is a show that was a long time ago getting 900,000 to almost 1 million viewers. And now it's not, you know. And it seems to me, and I'm just going to throw this in here right now, considering a lot of people have noticed that nobody said that All In was a pay-per-view, that All In could be an episode of Dynamite. And, you know, that's entirely possible. You could be having All In episode of Dynamite in order to try to juice the ratings for this show. I personally wouldn't do that because that's a very expensive arena to run just for television, but I mean, that's on them. They want to do things that way. They can do things that way. Ultimately, when it comes to Collision, adding 2 more hours of AEW content to Warner Brothers Television, you're going to have Tony Khan producing untold hours of pro wrestling content between Dark, Elevation, All Access, Dynamite, Rampage, and Collision. That's 6 shows. I think Dark and Dark Elevation are about an hour apiece. That's 2 hours. Dynamite is 2 hours. That's 4. All Access is an hour. That's 5. Rampage is an hour. That's 6. And that'll be 8 hours of just AEW television. That's not even counting Ring of Honor, which would put us at almost 10 hours. Now, if you take away Elevation and Dark, which are not televised, and Ring of Honor, which is not televised, that's 3.5 hours missing. So that's still 7 hours of television for AEW that is being created, most of which is underperforming in the ratings in terms of it should be doing better. Not saying that it's doing bad. It's just it should be doing better. It could be doing better. The potential to do better is always there. I'm not sure why you would want to produce so much product. I know that, hey, WWE produces a lot of product, but WWE has large brand recognition. SmackDown and Raw have huge cultural cachet. And then WWE occasionally does other things like biographies or Miz TV, Miz and Mrs. and Total Divas and all this kind of stuff. And AEW is trying to do all of that. You know, Rose to the Top and All Access. They're trying very, very hard to put themselves on WWE's level. And they have the money to do it because Tony Khan has endless amounts of money to burn on a wrestling product. So he can do it if he wants to, you know, but will the public relations campaign actually work? He's going to spend his way into success. The question is going to be, there still is not enough people enjoying the product for it to be anything more than Tony Khan is just super serving people that already like AEW. And what's going to suffer once you do this? You know, like once you add this second show, Collision, there's going to be people who are going to say, okay, now I have to watch Dynamite, I have to watch Collision, I can skip Rampage. People who used to watch Dark and Elevation are not going to watch that anymore. Sometimes people may decide not to even watch Ring of Honor anymore because it's too much wrestling, you know? So you might have to backdoor Ring of Honor into one or two of Dynamite and Rampage. I mean, Dynamite and Collision in order to keep it relevant. Because Ring of Honor, even currently right now, is not even a relevant wrestling program. Nothing happens on that show. You know, like you have to be a super wrestling fan to watch Ring of Honor. So you're in a really weird position. That AEW's brand is not strong enough to carry all of the product that Warner Brothers wants to do. It's almost like you see Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles out there, and there's action figures, and there's cartoons, and there's a video game. So you decide, I'm going to do Battletoads. And you start just following in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles' footsteps, thinking, hey, it was successful for them, it should be successful for us. They've got fighting turtles, we've got fighting frogs. They got arcade games, we got arcade games. They got video games, we got video games. They got action figures, we got action figures. And you're trying to do everything that they do with a smaller audience. And everything just keeps coming across as being second rate because you're not doing anything new. You're just following in the footsteps of another franchise. And that's essentially what AEW is doing. I said that they was rushing to make the video game And the video game, here it is 3 years later, and that game still has not been released. Why do they have to have a video game so soon? They started making this video game in year 1. They started making video games. Here it is 4 years later. They still have not gotten that video game out. They started putting together reality TV shows, Rose to the Top, because WWE had Miz and Mrs., and they had the Bella Twins had a TV show. So AEW had to do the same thing, and it didn't work. Rose to the Top was a shitty show. Nobody watched it. Nobody cared about it. WWE had 2 shows. They got to have 2 shows. You're just looking at this thing and you're saying to yourself, I know a ripoff when I see one. And the quickest way to look like a ripoff is to follow in their footsteps. If you're going to do a brand split because, well, WWE did a brand split, we can do one too. It's like, well, people complain about WWE's brand split and it's not done right. And when they do the brand split, they have 2 world champions, 2 mid-card titles, and people say it's too many belts. When it comes to AEW, there's already too many belts. And you're talking about maybe creating new belts for this Collision show because it's going to be a brand split? Or is it only going to be some way of them sharing a championship? What about the pay-per-views? Let's say the point of creating the Collision show is so that the 2 rosters won't have to be at each other's throats all the time. Okay, but you're still going to have pay-per-views. So what about the pay-per-view shows? What about Double or Nothing? And CM Punk and his crew are like, hey, we've got X, Y, and Z going on our show, while the Elite are like, hey, we got A, B, and C going on our show. Are you going to make Double or Nothing like 18 hours to try to fit everybody on the show? No, because that's the WWE problem that they had. They had 2 brands, Raw and SmackDown. So sometimes, and most of the time it was Raw, they get most of the show. SmackDown would get 2 or 3 matches on the show. Raw would get 5, And then you make people think that SmackDown is a B show. Occasionally it will be reversed, but most of the time it would be whatever was on Raw gets most of the TV time. So I guarantee it'll be the same thing when it comes to AEW. It'll be whatever is on Dynamite, which will probably still be the most watched show of the AEW products. It will get most of the pay-per-views, which is going to create a problem in the Ring of Honor, not in the Ring of Honor, but in the Collision locker room, because these guys are going to be like, hey, we're busting our ass. We're not going to get the pay-per-view bump. We're also not going to get the pay-per-view platform. What's happening here? What's going on? It's going to be a lot of grumbling. So you create a whole new problem for yourself as you try to fit in the footsteps of WWE. Which is probably not the smartest thing to do. Just because I have said this 100 times. The quicker things burn, the quicker they burn out. AEW started out as a house of fire. It was a very strong product in terms of it being something that was different from WWE. When it was once a week, you could watch something that was different from Raw and SmackDown, or Raw, SmackDown, and NXT, and that was perfectly fine. It was actually shitty content, but it was fine because it was different. Now there's so much AEW, and even though they have better wrestlers and people with names across different continents, like, the Lucha Brothers and Jay White and all this kind of stuff, people are actually watching it less now than they were before because it's no longer novelty. It's become ubiquitous into the wrestling landscape where there's just so much wrestling. And a lot of it is now AEW that people are going to start saying, I'm not watching all this shit. Now, when it comes to that, all I can say is people aren't going to watch what they're not going to watch. People already don't watch Impact. People already don't watch New Japan. They already don't watch Ring of Honor. They don't watch NXT, not really. Even though NXT does better ratings than most of the AEW products, it's still it's the least watched televised WWE product outside of like the biographies. And sometimes the biography things can actually rival NXT in numbers. So that kind of stuff is out there. It's too much wrestling content on cable. Yes, there is too much. But ultimately, people are going to make their own decision. I just want to say, how many people are really going to be as invested in Collision as, people are in WWE? And you just don't have the audience. I applaud the attempt, because you do want to try to make your superstars happy, your wrestlers happy. You do want CM Punk in the product, and you don't want him to commingle with the Elite because they have very different ideas of what wrestling should be. So maybe CM Punk gets a show to create what he wants, and the Elite get a show to create what they want, and you just gonna finance both of them, fine. I support that as a way of getting around the initial problem of all these guys not wanting to work together. But eventually, reality will set in that you simply don't have the audience to hold both of those products up. You are Battletoads. You are not Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that was built over time. You know, WWE didn't start out with all of these, with 2 brands and 2 world titles and all this stuff. These things were built up over time. They used to have hella B shows. They used to come on at Saturday mornings and Sunday afternoons and stuff like that. Yeah, you can get away with that in syndication. But now when you're talking about national television cable, you're kind of pushing it too far, and trying to make all of it count, trying to make all of it matter. You're going to end up in Action Zone territory where, oh yeah, it was a big launch for Action Zone, but who the hell talks about Action Zone today? That's where you at with Rampage right now. Rampage had a spark when it started. Title change on the first show, CM Punk debuts on the second, but that's it. And then also, why couldn't you just turn Rampage into the CM Punk show? Why have a whole new 2-hour program when you could just turn Rampage into the AEW CM Punk show? Because one of the problems that you got is that not enough people on the roster want to work with CM Punk. Okay, well, have a Dynamite crew and a Rampage crew. When Dynamite is over, all of those people leave. The Elite, all of their friends, they take off. And then the Rampage crew comes in and they work CM Punk and his crew. And guess what? I guarantee you Rampage will do infinitely better because the main acts will be CM Punk and FTR. And between the two of them, they can fill a 1-hour show with just what they do. And then give a little bit of time to other people. But a 2-hour show, are you talking about people only being interested in 2 parts of the goddamn show? And that's giving FTR a lot of credit because they're not a big draw. I'm just giving them credit for being a draw, and if they do trios matches with CM Punk or something like that, it could get people's attention. But that's, me giving FTR way too much credit because they're not a big television draw. They're not a big pay-per-view draw or anything like that. We've seen that, So I'm just saying, you could, if you want to split the brands, you could just add another hour to Rampage and let CM Punk run Rampage. But if you want to have Collision, so be it, But this is all just chitter chatter right now. None of this stuff is set in stone. So this is just me rambling, thoughts popping into my head as people talk about whether, Dynamite should be, Collision should exist or what it should be or whatever, and what it's more likely to be. It is what it is. It's still going to be another Tony Khan produced product that's going to probably underwhelm and get overrated like a lot of things people do. So, and it's going to be up to people whether they want to watch it or not. I will probably watch the first couple of episodes of it, probably not at the time that it's released. I doubt I'll watch, a 8 o'clock on Saturday show at 8 o'clock on Saturday. I usually have something else to do. Maybe I'll watch it Sunday morning or something like that. But, it's always going to depend on what are they doing on that show, who are they going to feature on that show, and when they feature these people, what are they actually going to be doing? What are they going to be fighting for? What are they going to do with the titles? Are they going to use the Ring of Honor belts, or are they going to try to split some of the titles from Dynamite? Are you going to be bringing in people just for this show? Or are you going to utilize people that are underutilized on the rest of the rosters? It's going to be a lot of questions. But I just simply don't think AEW has the strength in their brand to do this, to do a brand split. I don't think they have it right now. I think it's basically just WWE did it so we can do it too. But that was built up over time. Again, initially SmackDown was the Rock show. There is no Rock to Dynamite. There's no Rock to Rampage or Collision. CM Punk isn't the Rock. Is he a TV draw? Compared to Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, yes. Compared to some other people in wrestling history, no. But give it a shot. I mean, Thunder didn't really work out. SmackDown did. Maybe your show would be SmackDown and it won't be Thunder. Who knows? But I at least applaud Tony Khan trying to figure a way around this situation. These guys don't want to work together. Okay, let's create it. If Warner Brothers is willing to invest in the second show, so be it. That's more money for AEW, so go for it. All right, what do you guys think?
MagMongoSlade. Best house I ever drew, Daddy.